Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Boran Kim, an Assistant Program Specialist at the International Information and Networking Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage in the Asia Pacific region under the auspices of UNESCO. Working within the framework of the 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage, each CAP operates information and networking programs to support UNESCO's strategic plans with the 48 member states of the Asia Pacific region. Within this framework today, each CAP and the UNESCO Bangkok office are co-hosting the second session of the ICH webinar series entitled Teaching and Learning Heritage-Related Disciplines During the COVID-19 Pandemic. We have invited 5 scholars from India, Australia, Singapore, Italy, and the People's Republic of China to present their experience on the subject. So before we start with their presentation, I would like to welcome Mr. Dong Wei, who represents the Asia Academy for Heritage Management, AAHM, to give a message to our audience and presenters. Please, Professor Dong Wei, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. It's very happy for me to join this SH webinar focused on heritage conservation. I think it's a very important occasion for us to sit down here through internet to discussing these important issues. Just a week ago, I joined a series webinar by UNESCO talking about the similar issues, especially how historical cities can be recovered after the COVID-19. And I think it's also an important task for everybody of us. And I think it's a very important occasion for us to discuss these important issues from different points of view. And I'm happy I saw Han, Dr. Han is also here, and a lot of friends are also here. And I think we can use this afternoon to discuss this issue. This is just a start point for us, I think. And I hope through this webinar, we can work closely, more closely together, focused in heritage conservation in Asia. And as a member of AHM universities, here I also hope more and more university can join this platform to discuss this issue. And then I think it's better for us to have some practical cases to offer for everybody. It's not just for professionals, but also it could be used for education and upgrading for capacity. This, I think, is an important task for UNESCO Bangkok, especially. So I hope this webinar, through our professionals' contribution, could reach to a very good result. And here in Nanjing, I hope this webinar succeed very successfully. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks, Professor Dong Wei. So just for the audience who don't know about what is AHM, I will just briefly introduce the Asian Academy of Heritage Management. So it was founded under the UNESCO and then International Center for the Study of the Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Property, ICROM, in 2001 to strengthen professional capacity to manage heritage resources by providing a regional platform for institutional cooperation in education, training, and research. On the other hand, the Asia Pacific Higher Education Network for Safeguarding Intangible Cultural Heritage, so-called AFNH, is a similar network established in 2018 in the field of intangible cultural heritage. So it aims to foster an environment of cooperation and collaboration for ICH safeguarding through academic activities that strengthens capacity of teachers and the skills of students for a better future. So I think the theme of today's webinar session is particularly important in rethinking how often we cannot think of a tangible heritage without the intangible elements of our culture and vice versa. I believe this is a special moment to remind ourselves of the intimate connection between intangible and tangible heritage. And in addition to this, each CAB is collaborating with the UNESCO headquarters and SH Academy to develop a massive open online course, so-called MOOC, on the safeguarding living heritage and sustainable development. So a variety of themes such as ICH safeguarding and gender, ICH safeguarding and resilience, and etc. will be discussed through 25 chapters with a 6 weeks time frame. And we aim to open the courses we aim to open the MOOC courses to the public for especially reaching out to university students and young people with an interest in heritage and management and development. So we also wish to disseminate these MOOC courses as much as possible for lecturers in higher education institutions who seek online resources for heritage teaching. So if you are students or lecturers interested, please continue to pay attention to this project. We aim to open the courses to the public maybe around this December. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the YouTube and Facebook chat box. We will also have time for questions at the end. So now I will turn the time over to today's moderator, Professor Ham Hani. So Ham Hani is a professor emeritus of Jeonbuk National University, Republic of Korea, and the director of Center for Intangible Cultural Studies. She's now involved in several research projects regarding the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage, collecting Korea's traditional knowledge system and people's life history. So I'd like to welcome Professor Ham Hani.
Hi. My name is Hani Ham. As Puram introduced you, I am a director of Center for Intangible Heritage Studies and a UNESCO accredited NGO. I am a former professor in Jeonbuk National University. I'm very much interested in the many fields in safeguarding of ICH. So, okay, now today I'm very honored to be the moderator of the second session ICH webinar series. The title of this session is Teaching and Learning Heritage Related Disciplines During COVID-19 Pandemic. We have 5 presenters, and we all welcome the presenters and audiences around the world. Today, we are going to have a very important and very informative presentations. We are expecting from the prominent presenters. Okay, the main, as everybody already know that, the main theme is that what are the current challenges faced by universities in teaching heritage-related disciplines. This is the main focus of the discussions. So be aware of that. Our main a theme, but 5 presenters will give us a very good topics related to the ICH safeguarding and teaching and education area. So I will give the floor to Professor Neel Chapagain, the Director of Center for Heritage Management, Ahmedabad University, a center dedicated for advancing critical but holistic education on heritage management in Asia Pacific region. Okay, Professor Neel Carmen, are you ready to present your presentations?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Ham. Thank you, Boram, and thank you, ICHCAP and UNESCO Bangkok for this wonderful invitation. Is my sound all right?
Yes.
Can you hear me properly? Okay.
Yes.
No problem.
So, yeah, so let me share with you a small presentation. Basically, in today's discussion, I would like to share at Ahmedabad University Center for Heritage Management what we are going through, particularly in terms of our heritage courses. And I would like to also reflect on how do we deal with this new situation that we are all facing today. So the topic of my sort of contribution here is pedagogy for ICH and COVID-19 like pandemic. So we have to keep in mind that this is not the only pandemic probably we are going to see. Around 100 years back, there was a similar pandemic, but probably 100 years is too long. We already forgot, and we probably didn't accommodate many of these situations in our pedagogy. So I'm going to focus on pedagogy aspect. Even though the focus is in ICS, it actually reflects on the larger domain of heritage management education. Many of you may think HCAP, the FNH, UNESCO's initiatives. One of the conferences we had last year, where we discussed about pedagogy for heritage education, we're also looking at UNESCO's work on education for sustainable development, ESD, where education has been promoted as an important pillar of achieving the sustainable development goals by 2030. Now, within that, it is also now increasingly recognized that heritage education plays an important role, and more importantly, the intangible cultural heritage is a way to achieve a sustainable future, sustainable communities. Now, the ESD doesn't just focus on delivering education. It also has a few critical points that we need to keep in mind at the very beginning. It expects us to have our education be transformative to the students, but also to the society. It also expects us to, or guides us to reorient our existing pedagogy and think about the new context, emerging challenges, and address that, and translate that into the learning, the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to the students. Now, in that framework, how does ICS come into the education? It might come as a full-length program, it might come as a focused programs, or it might come into individual courses also, which I'm sure you all are aware of. But now let's think about what's happening to these different layers of education in today's times. The COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic impacted the entire world. And I think all of us share the same kind of concerns that we are sharing today. One thing I must reflect is the disaster management has been a topic since last few decades, and we have probably progressed so much. But I think somewhere I find that the pandemics like COVID-19 was not in our radar very strongly. And that's why probably we missed out on some of the things. And I would share with you very quickly how in our program, we sort of missed out on that part. And as I mentioned, maybe it's that 1 century gap. Of course, there was other pandemics like the SARS, the MERS, and the Ebola and all that. But since these were not pandemic, these were endemic, I think we sort of didn't, took it as a global challenge. And here we are today facing this global challenge, and here we are to discuss that. So I think this is an opportunity, and probably not an opportunity as an option, but opportunity as a compulsion to rethink our pedagogy for ICH as well as other heritage education. At the Center for Heritage Management, we run a master's program in heritage management. This is an overall framework of the program. I'm not going into detail here, but I would like to draw your attention to a few major components of the program where, due to this COVID-19 crisis, when India went into lockdown in 3rd week of March, we suffered seriously, and that still continues today. The inaugural seminar, which is supposed to happen next month for the new coming group, we don't know how we are going to do that. Field immersion, very critical component part of our pedagogy, where we engage with the communities to learn. We don't know, and we are rethinking now, how should we do the field immersion? Is it going to be a digital immersion? Is it going to be a sort of a virtual immersion within a classroom? We don't know, but we have to also look at our learning outcomes and see how better to deliver. Practicum, a very hands-on experiential learning with organizations and communities, a very important part of our curriculum. In the middle of the curriculum now has been tweaked, has been in process of tweaking and switching to this and that format. Similarly, social responsibility, a volunteer component that our program has. Now we can go to a community and do our social responsibility. So these are some of the components, and of course there are individual courses that couldn't be delivered because of this pandemic. Like we completed last semester by turning into online mode for most of the courses, but there were at least one course which we had to keep on hold because we couldn't think that course could be just offered online. So that means we have to think about our pedagogy, the philosophical framework of our pedagogy that was accepted in the program. Basically, our pedagogy had different components that you can see in this slides, different stakeholders, and the interaction between different stakeholders leading to different kinds of experience in our program. And these experiences were what you're seeing in different levels of the diagram earlier. Now, the emphasis was also, of course, the classroom learning in a typical university setting is the must today, but our heritage program particularly thrived more on the field-based learning. Because from the field-based learning, you achieve the transformative learning, you achieve learning that contributes back to the community, and you also achieve a meaningful, very critical understanding of heritage and probably thoughts for future management. Now, this entire pedagogical framework is in crisis today because we can't leave our home, we can't meet in the classroom, we can't go to the field. And therefore, at Ahmedabad University, we're thinking, how do we address this concern? Now, just to summarize what's happening in this situation, this is just an example of how this course that was sort of postponed in last semester, and we don't know when we can resume this particular course. This is from one of those years when we were running this course. This particular picture is from a farmer's field, a farmer who is doing organic farming. We're learning with this farmer, being in his soil, under the tree, and learning about it. Now, there will be many other communities that will go and learn. For example, a craftsman community, a community of musicians, a community of social organizations who would be working with the gender issues, the social issues, but then connecting back to heritage and craftsmanship and all that. Now, this is halted. In this pedagogy that we had adopted, as you can imagine, communities is a major player in our learning process. And of course, the faculty, which are also now, sort of stuck in their home, and the students. Now, the pedagogy was developed in this overlap between these three key stakeholders, and that would happen in this particular context, right? Now, this was the core of our pedagogy, which is now challenged to be delivered in this new situation. What has happened because of this situation is that very inquisitive and respectful students, their interaction with the welcoming communities, and a very collaborative and mentoring faculty, they have just now been separated apart. This is the new normal. This is the reality that we all are facing. Now, how do we deal with this? This is the crisis we're facing in our program, and I'm sure you are also all thinking about it. Of course, we can opt to just turn things into digital, but probably there are a few more issues. So just to share how we are responding to this crisis. In 1 month into the crisis, we decided, okay, let's catch up with each other. Let's catch up with faculty. Let's catch up with the students, graduates, alumni, and discuss how can we help each other? How can we continue our learning? So we organized an informal meeting, and this meeting was supposed to just focus on catching up with each other in a very informal manner. But the discussion went very seriously, and some of the points I have listed in the right low part of the slide, that the concern started saying, oh, what's happening with the craftspeople? What is happening with the communities that we're supposed to visit last month? How are they managing their livelihood? How are they probably selling their products? How are they getting their raw materials? How are they practicing? How are they doing, the intergenerational transmission of the knowledge and all that? We started thinking about that. And those kind of questions led us to think, of course, we are running other courses online, but can these kind of courses be run online where we don't meet with the communities, we don't deal with them and just learn hypothetically? These are the serious questions to learn. But then these questions led to a very philosophical questions that what happens to our human relationship between these people who are our knowledge partners? Now we're not able to help them, not able to interact with them in person. So the students flag very important issues that do not we have a very serious social responsibilities beyond our typical academic teaching and learning? And that led us to think, at least, okay, let's start with this digital dialogues. And we started with a series of webinars, which are still happening. Last week there was one. I think in the next week, on July 12th, we're planning another one on the indigenous knowledge systems. So a lot of webinars we organize in different themes, reaching out to different practitioners and communities. For this webinar, I would like to highlight one webinar that we did, which was really remarkable. One webinar we organized, which was coordinated by two of our alumni. And what they did was they reached out to the communities that we used to go and learn. And they identified at least one from each of these communities. So we had three panelists in this webinar. One was the village leader, the sarpanch, the village headman. One was a folk artist, and one was an artisan who is practicing, different forms of art. Now through them, we wanted to find out how is their life in this difficult situation. And that conversation for 1.5 hours was so enriching, so powerful. If I have to summarize, I think two major things came out of that. One is their life is equally difficult as anybody else, because somehow in the policy system, somehow in the economic framework, their need, their aspirations were not counted. So they were living a different kind of a life. Now that made us think that, oh, maybe we need to go out and help them. But then at the same time, the second aspect came out very strongly, which is they were also very creative people. They're very creative communities. They found a way to help each other. They found a way to sort of make sure that they don't lose out their core practices. Of course, there were challenges also. People already started thinking about new occupations, because the hardcore craftsmanship was not going to survive, because some of them had a very peak season, and all of this sudden this lockdown happened. Some of them had the peak season coming up and they were preparing for it, but now it doesn't make sense to prepare because future was very uncertain. And therefore they were thinking to switch their occupation. They were thinking to do something else. Some of them, however, were also thinking very creatively, thinking, oh, if after the COVID crisis, if the new normal is going to be something else, how should we sort of modify our practices? How should we integrate technology into our practices? And thinking aloud. So for us, the lesson from this particular webinar was that we should not be thinking that, oh, these people need our help and we should just go and save them. I think there is so much that we can learn from them as they adapt to the new situations. I think for us, that's a very important learning. But we also need to keep in mind that the situation is not same across the board. And therefore, as some of them are very creative, some of them might be suffering very badly. They might be suffering for their livelihood. So how can you contribute? And I feel very happy to hear many of our students being so concerned about their livelihood, so concerned about helping the craft remaining alive for the new normal later on. So these are the kind of questions that came up, which then later on we realized that actually before the pandemic we had already started an extracurricular activity by the name of Heritage Learning Lab. Now the idea of this Heritage Learning Lab was, as much as we go out to the community and spend some time and do our courses by learning with them, we also wanted to contribute back to them. So this was since last 2 years, we had started some projects into the communities by helping them, learn some new techniques. For example, here, one of the picture you see a training program we are doing for the villagers to be able to at least use some simple techniques, understand some basics ideas about heritage documentation. And with these villagers, our students and graduates have been working at the field to document their heritage and see how heritage can be part of their development plan, right? Now, because of this experience, we felt maybe there has to be a new kind of a collaboration between the communities and educational institutions, but then this requires our pedagogic framework to be adapted, to be changed. And I think this is where right now we are thinking. And at this point, I would like to just share, as a way of concluding, some of my personal thoughts on what could be our new pedagogy to integrate ICH into our mainstream education, but also to make heritage education a meaningful process for our society, and thereby contributing to the SDG agenda as well. First and foremost is, of course, the digital, the online is not an alternative now. It's a reality now. And I think across the world, we have seen people have also adapted very fast. I mean, in our university, within a day or two, we adapted all our remaining courses completely online. So I think we have the technology. The webinar that I mentioned also tells us that people actually, at the villages also already adapted to some of the technologies, right? So there is no choice but to make sure that the limited, so far, what was the limited use of digital and online technologies is a compulsion now. It's a new reality. We have to adapt it very creatively, very strongly. We have to expedite that process. There is no compromise in that. The second, a very important point is we have to empower not just our curriculum to be able to deal with the technology and make it available in any time, but we also need to empower our collaborators, the communities that we learn with, the ICS practitioners, the ICS bearers, the knowledge bearers. We need to make sure that they are also equally empowered. They can also work with the technology, not only to run their businesses, not only to transmit their knowledge, but also to think about the world in a different way, so that they're not left out in the new normal, right? And I think as an educational institution, this should also be part of our focus in the curriculum, so that the new curriculum is fair and accessible and equitable. Now that requires us to think about our courses very creatively now. We have to redesign our courses creatively. We have to have a flexible schedule, because now you can't go to a village for a week or 10 days. So how do you keep learning? So we have to do that, but we have to keep in mind that we should not compromise on our meaningful engagement. And I still think this meaningful engagement can be achieved more by in-person engagement than just virtual engagement. Maybe virtual is there for some time, but we have to find new ways of having this in-person engagement also, and move forward. So this creativity and meaningful engagement is the third thought I have. Now, this also leads to some new challenges. Of course, in our program, we discuss about ethics, we have a course on ethics, but I think now is the time that we also need to rethink our ethical practices. We need to rethink about documentation. We need to rethink about use of technology. And therefore, the pedagogy also needs to ensure that a very critical discussion on ethical principles and processes, particularly relating to online and distant modes of engagement. What are the ethical? I think this is a new area we have to must research and bring into the curriculum. And then very carefully, we have to plan and deliver our new pedagogy. But the foremost important thing we have to keep in mind is, by doing this, by adapting to the new situation, we should be careful not to alienate the real life scenarios, real life practice of the ICS practitioners. Because in this increasingly virtual and online mode of practice and teaching and everything, we might make the ICS stories, the knowledge, the practitioners, it's just the digital characters somewhere and stories recorded somewhere and all that. I think we have to ensure that they remain a very living entity, very dynamic entity. And how do we ensure that? So I think we have to think about that in our new pedagogies and all that. So as a conclusion to my presentation, as a reflection of what are the struggles we are going through, I would like to mention that, in this kind of crisis, and maybe the crisis might come in another format in the futures to come as well, we may have to maintain physical distance, but we should never compromise on maintaining a very rich, engaging social and cultural relationships that are the core of ICS research, ICS safeguarding, but also ICS education. We need to make sure that our educational processes nurture this social relationship, even though we might be physically apart for the time being because of this crisis situation. But while doing that, my thought is probably three areas we need to think forward and integrate into our new pedagogy and practices. One, of course, is the technology. Second is ensure that the access and equity to the resources and outreach, the access to the resources and outreach is equally available to all the stakeholders in the education practices that I earlier shared. And by doing that, we have also to make sure that the respect, the network of respect is not unbalanced. So the respect to the communities of practice needs to be maintained, because in this new crisis, when the economic situation is very volatile and all that, chances are very high that some of our ICS practitioners might suffer economically, and thereby they might also lose some of their social identity, social, the status and all that. We have to very carefully think that they should not lose out on their respect that the ICS was earning them otherwise. If they are compelled into a situation where they leave their ICS practices and go and do something else, we need to be careful about that. But also forcing into some ICS which may not be relevant to today might also. I think there's a larger set of dynamics that will be running around in the economics and social frameworks in the new normal situation. And I think our new pedagogy needs to also equally address that. So with those thoughts, I'll stop here, and I would look forward to a very meaningful conversation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Neel, Kamal, Chapagain. It's a wonderful and very significant presentations. Thank you again. You have started, Professor Chapagain started with contextual learning, which is an important concept for exploring multi-level pedagogy for ICH education and ICH-based education. In the midst of pandemic crisis, Professor Chapagain emphasized a new pedagogy in 3 ways, as we already fully understood. The importance of technology and access and equity to resources and outreach and respect to communities of practice. So Professor Chapagain covered all three objectives of our webinar. For your reference, we have 3 objectives. First one is examine the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on ICH teaching and learning. And the second one is to explore innovative teaching, which Professor Chapagain has already well presented to us. And the third one is to what would be the future, future relevant approaches to institutional material preparation. So everybody probably very much, concerned about the resource, collaborative resource, among the instructors and researchers, and to teach ICH effectively in universities and then other institutional organizations. Okay, your presentation fully covered 3 objectives of our webinar, so thank you so much again. And the next, I will introduce the next speaker, Dr. Nikhil Josh. Are you there? No, I'm sorry. Dr. Kristal Buckley. Are you there, Kristal Buckley? Yeah, floor is yours. And then let me briefly introduce you to the audiences. She is a lecturer in the cultural heritage in Deakin University, Melbourne, Australia. She has professional qualifications in archaeology and anthropology, public policy, and etc. She has worked in private practice and government and teaching and researcher. Her work has a focus on world heritage, nature, cultures, and urban landscapes. Okay, thank you very much. And floor is yours, Kristal Buckley.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to ICHCAP and to UNESCO and to all the colleagues for inviting me to participate. It's quite an honor. As has been said, my name is Kristal Buckley. I'm talking to you from the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people in the area that they know as Narm, which is Melbourne, and in Australia. I pay my respects to their elders and ancestors before I begin my talk. I should start my slides, right? I forgot to do that. Pardon me for a moment while I get it happening. So, how's that? It looks okay to me. I'm hoping you can see my slide presentation now. So, we've been asked to talk about heritage education in the context of the year we're having. We're only halfway through 2020, and we've already experienced such immense disruption to our usual ways of living, working, and connecting. Here in Australia, we had a very severe wildfire disaster even before the coronavirus pandemic, and we're already experiencing significant disruption before the pandemic arrived. So we feel like the year has already taken a long time, and yet it's only July. The first of these ICHCAP webinars highlighted how some of the issues for intangible cultural heritage arising from the pandemic and all the different measures that are being taken to return the world to good health. But It also demonstrated the importance of intangible cultural heritage in relation to community resilience and recovery. So I found that first webinar fascinating and very, very informative to my own work. But tonight we are focusing on what's happening with education. Worldwide, the pandemic closed schools, universities, and training organizations. To sustain their programs, most of us moved quickly from face-to-face to virtual or online forms of delivery. Some are beginning to reopen. We're not going to reopen during this calendar year, not until 2021. I know some others have been more fortunate and have been able to partially reopen their campuses and their classrooms. But for others, we are still working from home, and I'm coming to you from my own lounge room today. In addition to that, Australia at least, and probably in other parts of the world, universities have experienced severe financial shocks as a result of the sudden changes in mobility. So we're not really expecting to bounce back to wherever we were last year anytime soon. Maybe the situations are different for each of us. It'd be good to think about that. Our students have also faced difficult pressures and have concerns for their current and future employment. In Australia, employment in the culture sector is very badly affected during periods of economic stress. And our students worry about the future landscape and whether they will be able to get a job when they finish their course. A lot of planned research and exchanges have been put on hold because we cannot travel or meet together in person. Many funding organisations and partners have also suffered financial difficulties due to the pandemic. And it could be some years before we can expect to see the same levels of resources and mobility in our work. This webinar asks how we are responding to this disruption and what we are learning about education in the field of intangible cultural heritage. This is a useful topic since some of the learning might inform our practices moving forward when things are better. In other words, some of the shifts could be useful once we start to re-establish our approaches to teaching and learning. My presentation focuses on teaching intangible cultural heritage in the context of broader heritage education delivered at postgraduate levels of study. But before I do that, and hopefully my UNESCO colleagues are okay that I show you this, this is also something new during 2020. For the last few years, UNESCO's regional office in Bangkok, together with many partners, have been developing a competency framework for cultural heritage practitioners in Asia and the Pacific. This is due to launch later this year. A number of presenters in the webinar have been involved in this process, particularly Neel, Kamal, Chapagain, who we just met, and also Dr. Han from the UNESCO Bangkok office and other colleagues. The framework will be of interest and spells out core competencies in heritage work across 5 domains that are shown on the slide, operating at 4 different levels of seniority in the work of cultural heritage. This is such a broad sector, especially when considering the diverse context of Asia and the Pacific. However, even at the very basic level of information I've shown you here, it's evident that the competencies relevant to the recognition, documentation, transmission, and safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage are embedded in the framework, throughout the framework, really. It also establishes management competencies and personal competencies and acknowledges that there are specializations in the heritage field, such as anthropology, intangible heritage, traditional craftsmanship, and museology that are directly relevant to our discussions tonight. And we heard already from Boram Kim about the network for higher education for Asia Pacific in ICH in particular, which is very important. I'd like to stress before I say much more that digital literacy is incredibly important as a learning outcome in heritage education. This can be challenging for those of us who are providing the educational opportunities due to the fast pace of change. However, the workplace our students enter will employ digital methods for many different aspects of their work, despite the equal importance of more hands-on skills. So delivering learning that encourages digital learning is important, and thinking about how to diversify the assessment tasks that students undertake to encourage them to develop and practice their digital capacities is very worthwhile. Deakin University's program in Cultural Heritage and Museum Studies recently celebrated its 40th anniversary. Our courses are offered at the postgraduate level only and are situated within the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. This contrasts with other programs that you'll hear about tonight, which focus or are situated within schools for architecture or fine arts, archaeology, other disciplines. The disciplinary home of heritage education does tend to shape the content and the modes of delivery. Although we have a campus-based program in Melbourne based on intensive blocks of teaching and learning, for a long time we have oriented our modes of delivery to cloud learning to enable our students to learn anywhere. This means that currently our students aren't all here. They live all over the world and all over Australia. So thinking about how to now reach out to them in the current pandemic is quite complex. So, well, like everyone else, while we had to shift our practices suddenly when the COVID-19 stay-at-home policies were implemented, we were already substantially online. Our suite of postgraduate courses in cultural heritage include three main pathways: collections and curatorship, a heritage place practice, and entry to higher degree by research or PhD. You might know that Australia is not a signatory to the 2003 UNESCO Convention. So you might ask why we would need to teach ICH. However, I'm sure you know that intangible cultural heritage is a core area of learning in all heritage education and in our courses. And the convention's terminologies and methods are of direct relevance to practices in Australia. Shown on this slide are the main ways we teach. Sorry, I've got my slides out of order, but I'll just keep going. The main ways we teach ICH within the program and within the context of broader heritage and museum practices. Intangible cultural heritage is a core unit and is taken by all our students. There is another core unit which has a focus on human rights and other relevant issues. However, as this is not the only place where intangible cultural heritage learning is provided. Students can develop more specialised skills and knowledge through their research thesis and have opportunities for development through internships, study tours, and heritage projects. The impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic have not hit these subjects equally. For example, and this was very well explained by the previous speaker, our core unit in intangible cultural heritage was relatively easy to move fully online at short notice. Because our students are or are seeking to work in museums and heritage management roles, we assist them to challenge the duality of tangible and intangible and to see that ICH is everywhere in their work. Often our students are less familiar with ICH than with other topics when we begin. And we found that using themes such as the intangible cultural heritage of childhood or the intangible cultural heritage of food and foodways enable everyone to contribute something to the discussions. However, for us, all internships and work placements were abruptly cancelled earlier this year when cultural institutions and workplaces were locked down. And we don't expect these to be possible until 2021, as I said before. Students conducting ICH research projects or theses had interruptions and deviations to their research methods, and not all of these situations were able to be recovered. I'm therefore very interested to hear tonight how other colleagues might have addressed these challenges. I want to stress how important it is to work with colleagues who are knowledgeable about digital methods and modes of delivery. At Deakin, we have good support from our digital learning colleagues to help us do the best job we can, and frankly, to teach people like me to use tools that are unfamiliar. In my opinion, it's very hard to pivot to virtual delivery suddenly, and what has been done has been remarkable. But we need to have a good bank of materials, skills, tools, and connections with people and communities before the next pandemic or other disruption. If we haven't already done so, we need to start factoring this into the new normal. And I think what the previous example showed is that you can start to move into some degree of digital connection with communities, but only if you know them already. It's very difficult to establish those connections without the ability to meet if they're not already there. A lot of the success of the online environment for teaching still rests on the same things that our face-to-face teaching depended on. In our online teaching, that means connecting regularly with our students, sharing with them some of our own interests, and encouraging the students to engage with each other rather than solely with teachers. Digital platforms enable both synchronous and asynchronous communications. Both are important and have their place, but need some planning. Video is absolutely crucial, and I think the next speaker is going to show us some of that. And today, filming and video can allow an amazing diversity of experiences to enter the room. Short videos are excellent tools and do not need to be highly produced to be effective. It's important to remember that online engagement might be new for students as well as teachers, and it's our responsibility to model good online etiquette, a professional conversational tone, and respect for different opinions. This slide outlines some of the ways that we've been able to enhance our teaching during the pandemic using digital tools. I hasten to say that I have not personally mastered each and every one of these, but it's a composite list of possibilities that I know have been tried successfully this year by members of our team. The pandemic has given us the chance to try new things and to be imperfect in what we do. That's a good thing, and hopefully starts to enrich our capacity for the longer term. However, as I suggested earlier, there are limits to what we can do and emerging challenges. Some are shown here, and I've mentioned some of them already, especially those that relate to the employment futures in our fields. There are also issues for our students who might not all have good access to the technologies we want to use, and the communities and practitioners that we try and engage with, as Neel Kamal Chapagain has said. Many students are shy to speak up when meeting virtually, much more so than in an actual classroom. And there are all kinds of issues to consider when striving for an inclusive virtual classroom. And we're all learning and trying new things. As I've already said, some very important aspects of learning just can't be easily replicated in the online environment. For me, the most important issue relates to the ethics of our practice as teachers. When making recordings and when asking our students to think about what they can do on their own, it's very important to model ethical practice with our students, to respect cultural protocols and to ensure benefit sharing, making sure we give back to the communities that help us so much to educate our students. We are working with communities. I also think the establishment of networks, such as this one, such as the APNICH and the Asian Academy for Heritage Management, are incredibly important. And I hope we're able to utilize those and share our experiences and actual teaching across some boundaries as a result. There's a famous book in heritage site management published by ICROM and written by some very, very famous colleagues, and it's called Between Two Earthquakes. And that's because we are always between two earthquakes, the last one that happened and the next one that hasn't happened yet. And I think that as others have said tonight, drawing that same thinking into our experience of pandemics is just as important. One of the things our students have done a lot of this year, which I think is been very enriching for them and will be a good resource for us going forward in our own teaching, is to actually document what's happened this year, what's happened to the cultural institutions they know, what's happened to the communities they are close to. And we've been compiling that experience just as we go, very imperfectly. But I think that's going to be a rich resource as we move forward. So I'll finish my presentation here. Thank you very much for your attention, for the invitation to join and to listen. I'm very, very keen to do that. And I send you some greetings from our very wintertime Melbourne. Good evening.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Kristal Buckley. We have learned a lot from your presentation, and also you shared your experience in teaching and education in the Deakin University, and you showed us several very excellent programs, like master programs, and also you just mentioned that you are just recording the current the situation of the pandemic, the crisis. So that must be a very resourceful for not only your, your communities, but also the all over the world. Thank you for that kind of, very your initiatives is a very excellent, the job, and I really appreciate it. And okay, and also the Dr. Buckley indicated specific characteristics of digital learning. Also, I have learned a lot, and the many audiences also I learned very precious information about digital learning in Deakin universities. Okay, also we can share the issues and challenges that you indicated. And most the challenges and issues, including the ethical practices and to the a professional employment, the prices of the employment, which the students are now facing. That's a very challenging issues. Now all the professors are confronting. So thank you very much once again, the Professor Buckley. And next, our next presenter is Dr. Nikhil Josh. Nikhil, where is the Nikhil Josh? Okay, yep. Let me introduce briefly. He's a senior lecturer in the Department of Architecture at the National University of Singapore. His research interests include cultural heritage management, trading building materials and techniques, and community participatory approaches. His the presentation title is that the documentary film and narrative techniques to facilitate architecture students' understanding of local cultural heritage. Okay, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, the organizers, and thank you for inviting me to this very the amazing work they do in the university. So it's quite encouraging and inspiring to hear that how other universities are dealing with this crisis situation. For NUS, excuse me, or for Singapore, we are quite fortunate. It's a small country, and due to the efforts of government, we controlled it quite well actually. So from earlier this month, we are partially open, the country and the university. And although we are told that the default mode of teaching for the entire next semester, which we start in August, will be online. So like Kristal said, we will be going to face in 2021 only. So that's quite interesting, because we have to change our mode. We have to change our teaching style. We have to change our modules as well, because a lot of things, then students can go out and do field work and everything is not going to happen, because we still don't allow large gatherings. So my presentation is slightly different from the previous two speakers, Neel and Kristal, is because we unfortunately or fortunately we don't have a full master's program on cultural heritage management yet. But this year was quite remarkable, because during the pandemic, I call this as a fated opportunity that we could get in March, when the pandemic was at its peak. We could get a UNESCO chair on architectural heritage management in Asia, which is fantastic. So we have a UNESCO chair now, which is my head of the department. And then just last month, our university senate approved a new master's program in architectural conservation. So these two things happened very quickly, and so we are very busy now to start our new master's program in heritage management from January onwards. So what I'm going to talk today is basically what we have been doing, which is not purely conservation or heritage management, but conservation as the ICH or heritage as part of a bigger architecture course, because we run this as part of the Department of Architecture, and we also run small electives and professional courses. So what I'm going to share is I'll share my screen first, and yeah. So what I'm going to talk about, I mean, broadly, is my presentation is divided into three parts. The first is pre-COVID, as I call it, is when we were doing all these field schools, courses, hands-on, and things like that. Fortunately, as part of these the summer schools and the field schools or electives, what we used to have, we used to have a very important part of these field schools as a documentary film and narratives technique. So what we did is we have a very good collection of all these material already with us, and we have been using it during the COVID situation for the last 3 months. And also we plan to organize and curate these documentary films and short videos for our master's programs as well. So because, as the previous speaker said, that digital is going to be the new normal. So and I quite agree with both speakers that digital cannot be this only way of going with the community and the ICH, but we are trying that how to reach a balance. So what I'm going to talk today is documentary film and narrative techniques, which we have used in the previous field schools and also in different courses, and we managed to record them, and how we are using it now in the situation, and how do we plan to use it in future as well. So as you can see, ICH, and this is a bigger picture of how ICH is involved in various subjects, and the ones which are highlighted in red, architecture and cultural heritage management, is what we teach in Department of Architecture and NUS in my university, and we understand that ICH is very important for these two. Although, like I said, we never had a master's program or undergraduate program in heritage management, but we understand and that it is quite important ICH. So we made sure that our students at different times of their undergraduate and postgraduate studies are exposed to this ICH element in their architecture and heritage management electives. Okay, so it's just this is our philosophy basically in our department, is embedding the ICH elements into architecture design curriculum. It's like I said, we appreciate and we understand that architecture is not just about buildings. It's about people. It's about cultures. So how do we embed these ICH elements? That's what we've been doing for last several years. And like I said, field school was very important part of this immersion program, because then we can take our students to different part of ASEAN nations, and we've been doing this since 2005, working with the local universities and working on a real issues with the real communities on a real problems, and trying to learn together with the local universities, local students, Singapore, and other students. So we have been doing this for last until 2019 was the last one, and this was this year we have to stop it because we couldn't do it. But next year we plan to do it in July again, and this is again a ASEAN level a joint school. The second part is like I said, students go to a country, and I'll explain it later. How do we do it? And then we spend 3 weeks or sometimes 4 weeks there, and it's a very intensive course. Around 20 to 30 students work in group, work with the communities, and try to understand together with the communities, explore the intrinsic, multi-layered indigenous life of the historic places and the culture. So that's part of their understanding that architecture is not just about buildings. It's so for some it is kind of a shock that why I'm working with this the small community, and I don't see anything heritage here. But it's quite fortunate that within 3 weeks they kind of appreciate that it's quite important to understand whether they work as a conservation architect or not. That's another thing. But this appreciation of local heritage is quite important. And we do this using the inquiry-based learning techniques. We encourage the students to understand the process of community engagement and to manage the local heritage in the broader historic environment. So it's a guided inquiry-based learning. So we just guide them. The tutors, different tutors, act as a facilitators and let the students learn from each other, learn from the community. So it's a very interesting exercise, and we and the other students have got the feedback. It's quite enjoyable as well. So this is what we do. This is just a snapshot of one. I think this was in 2016 in Songkhla, southern part of Thailand. There were students from 5 or 6 different universities, from Malaysia, of course from Singapore, and a few from Thailand as well. And the students were working for 2 weeks in Songkhla, and then they came back to Singapore, and then they finished their work, and then we have exhibitions in Malacca and in the community as well. So Songkhla is a small port town, and we were working in the old town area, and the students were given a sort of a kind of a open brief, and with the help of different community participants and other tutors, they were immersed in different learning activities, and at the end of it, we had films, short documentary films from each group about what they thought about the significant in that particular community. We had an inventory of the buildings and the cultural, the businesses happen in that small old town, and we also have architectural drawings. We did measure drawings and models and everything, which was then presented to the community. And so it was a very interesting experience, because we were outside the classroom, and I understand we all appreciate that we can't do this sort of thing now with the travel restrictions and everything. But what I'm talking is how we are using these inventories and films. I will show how we are using it now when we can't actually go there. And as Kristal said, we can't actually. I agree with her fully that we can't actually go to a new community. We have to know the community beforehand. So this is how we are fortunate that we have made a very intensive and complex network of universities and communities around Asia, the ASEAN region. And so we are very fortunate that if you want to talk to someone, we have someone to talk and do a Zoom session or something and talk about the issues. So that's our strength for the last 15 years running this program. This was another one which was the last year, 2018. It was in Yogyakarta in Kauman. Yeah, the same thing. It's University of Malaya, NUS, and local Yogyakarta University students, UII mainly. And so Kauman is a small community famous for batik and food, local food. So it's a very close-knit community. Students were there. We were working right in the center, and we were working, we were talking, and it was an eye-opener for students that how these small communities survive. They learn a lot, and then they come back and they use it in their design, and fortunately some of them even go and do a master's other than NUS and work as a conservation professional. I mean, this is a part of our teaching and learning as well. The students have to themselves have to develop a website. And so these are the 3 websites on the screen where you can go and see the students' work from day 1 till the last day, which can be 18th day or 20th day or 24th day. So 24 days or 18 to 23 weeks to 4 weeks, they document everything what they do. So that's again a very interesting and quite important sort of a collection for us to have all these years, at least for the last 3 years. I've been doing this together with the films and other things that they have to come up with a full documentation of each day, what they have, very short blogs. So they write their own blogs and which currently I'm using for different online programs. I'm going to show you quickly a video, which is a long video, which is I'll show you some snippets of a video done in Ban Panthom, which is a community in Bangkok. Old community near the canal, and this community was famous for, as you can see, canal and the temples, and also for the silversmith. And the students were involved with the silversmith community and documented them, and so why it is important for the community to understand that, you know, how these people survive and how some of these traditional craftsmanship has been lost. So this is the same video, and at one end the old lady is talking about how it has been lost, the crafts, but across the road there is another shop, a craft shop, which has taken and doing it in a traditional way, but they are doing modern. They are not making the traditional crafts, but they are using the skills, the old skills, but they are doing something contemporary. And this was done by a group of students from Thai who are translating it in English, and then the students. So it was a very good exercise. Right. So, so these are the collections we have. I mean, this is just one part of. We have, like I said, for 15 years we've been running this. So we have a good collection of very interesting videos which we have been using now, and we plan to use it in our future programs. And not just the videos, like I said, there are blogs, there are publications. So every time we complete a field school, we have a publication, and that's again a very important one because. These again is a very tangible record of what we have done. So we are again using it as part of our current teaching practices and learning practices. So like I said earlier, although we don't have a full-fledged program of conservation and heritage management, but we do for the last few years we've been running short courses for professionals, and then again this was a lime plastering course and was done in our research center in Baba House, which is a historic building. So we were learning about the traditional building skills and the materials, how lime works or as a plaster, and why we have to use it. It was a 3 days exercise for professionals as well as the students. Again, we were fortunate that we recorded it, and by doing this, again, this became our because we are not again allowed to do this sort of thing due to the current crisis situation. But we managed to use these videos as part of our training programs now. This happened with the help of UNESCO and Korea Funds and Trust. Last year, we were talking about collaborations, and I've been working with AAHM and UNESCO for some time now on developing this collaboration, because as we have seen that if this sort of crisis situation happens, we actually cannot just rely on one department or one university. Excuse me. So this collaboration, like I said, is quite important, and we were fortunate that we already started this collaboration thing last year within 16 universities in Asia. How we can share our knowledge and learn from each other, which I feel that is quite important in this sort of situation. So this is what we have been doing for the last 3 months. This program, which we call as executive program, we have done two programs in February and March, which was a sort of a hybrid. So it was in the class, and you can see the people are social distancing and everything is and also online. And there were 31 participants from 6 different countries, which was quite successful. And so we tested this, and like I said, in these programs, we do online lectures, but we also use our already collected the collection of our videos and the blogs and information what we have to share here, because we can't do field trips and things like that. So that becomes quite handy at this situation. This is what we have been doing. We are enhancing our current collection of videos. We are making more videos, and like I can show you one very quick, and this is the last one. And we plan to do this in future as well. Have more recording of our work so that we can share it, and also we can collaboration is the key here for NUS, for Department of Architecture. We've been collaborating with Professor Dongwei is Southeast University, mainly with architecture schools. How we can collaborate and share their knowledge and their experiences and use them in the crisis situation. I'll just very quickly go through this, and this is the last slide. This is the lime plaster course we did and how we recorded it and how we are using it. This is the NUS conservation of old houses like Baba House. It's very important that the materials we use to repair and conserve allows the movement of moisture, and that's where the lime plaster comes. It's a porous material. It allows buildings to breathe. This is the most important place, I would say, in entire Singapore, where we can learn about the traditional building materials and also about the traditional building skills, the craft skills, and also learn about the spirit of the place and how people used to live here. See, for me, conservation of buildings is not just about buildings itself. It's about the people as well. So what we are trying to do here is to repair and conserve the house for the future generations to use it in a way that is compatible with the spirit of the house. So yeah, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Josh. Okay, I'm very sorry to tell you that we run out of time. So the next speakers should observe the time, the time frames. Okay, let me just briefly, summarize what Professor Josh said. It's a wonderful presentation. The awareness of heritage and indigenous culture is very important for architects, for planning cities and constructing buildings in historical Asian cities. So, as you said, but also the ICH, these professors and students also are inspired by the architecture, your groups. Okay, thank you again. The next speaker is the Dr. Danilo Pesce, right?
Pesce.
Okay. Pesce. I'm sorry. It's the wrong. Yeah, my pronunciation is wrong. He's a postdoctoral research fellow at Polytechnico di Torino, Turin, Italy. A visiting scholar at CAS Business School. His research interest is mainly focused on the organizational and industry level changes triggered by digital technologies adoption. Okay, the title of his presentation is Cultural Heritage and COVID-19. Okay, digital technologies to support new forms of resilience. Okay, thank you. And I'm going to invite Mr. Pesce.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. So first of all, can you see the slide, right? Can you see the screen?
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So good afternoon, everybody, and good morning for who is following us from Italy. It is a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me in this very important session. So my name is Danilo Pesce. I'm a research fellow in Polytechnico di Torino and a visiting research fellow in CAS Business School in London. My background is in management. I got a PhD in management, so I'm not an expert in art. I fell into this by chance, but I'm loving it. And in the next 15 minutes, I would like to quickly show you how digital technology can support cultural and higher educational institutions in responding, overcoming, and preventing the ongoing health emergency by supporting new forms of resilience. So just to start, a little bit of data. The cultural and creative sector are among the industries affected the most by the current coronavirus crisis. And cultural institutions are not an exception. So 90% of both public and private cultural institutions closed during the crisis, and more than 10% might never open again. And from the educational side, is pretty much the same. 91% of school students are experiencing school shutdown. So the interruption of tourism activities and the potential extension of health restriction can make this data even more dramatic in the long run. So just to explain the situation in Italy, the Italian National Institute of Statistics has estimated that the lockdown caused the loss of nearly 19 million visitors between March and May 2020, and the loss of approximately 78 million euros. So the ongoing pandemic emergency required a strategic rethinking and a reconfiguration of activities and processes in the cultural and educational context of heritage-related discipline, and the digital technology can help us. But what happened? So to cope with the unexpected shock of losing the physical contact with the public, most cultural organizations resorted to a massive digital communication strategy, generally improvised and only aimed at proposing a remediation, a sort of remediation of activities traditionally carried out in physical museum space. So for instance, the virtual tours. And on one hand, these unveiled the limits of the traditional object-centered museum model, which has been considered to be ill-equipped to the possibility of advancing its institutional mission beyond the physical presence of visitors. It was the same for educational without physical presence of students. And on the other hand, this highlighted how the sudden change in how people resort to culture has made digital technology a strategic asset, both for cultural and educational institutions. So to release a specific new form of public engagement and to explore the possible application of digital to replace the in-class session and to deal with the field work and practicum that are activities that are no longer allowed within the pandemic context. So the problem is how to translate the new digital content created by cultural institutions into effective teaching and learning experience in the educational context. So essentially, digital technologies have enabled two ways of teaching and learning cultural heritage during the COVID pandemic. So first of all, we can count on tight collaboration with cultural institutions in sharing teaching resources and exchanging knowledge. This kind of collaboration enables high knowledge and content depth, since the cultural institutions are the temple of knowledge, which can be conveyed by higher educational institutions that by definition are the forum through which this knowledge can be taught and learned. However, this collaboration requires high coordination mechanism between cultural and educational institutions for the preparation of content and the related storytelling, but especially the necessary condition that such content has already been digitized, so for instance, like collection or workable virtual tour. The other way is to adopt a new innovative teaching model using digital platforms. So for instance, we have, for the worldwide cultural heritage, we have Google Arts and Culture, or for the European cultural heritage, we have Europeana. So digital platforms that enable high knowledge breadth, more than depth, and in terms of content and cross-content connection, but also enable new ways of teaching and learning knowledge by experimenting at the edge of the digital frontier. So let me just give you, I will start with the collaboration with cultural institutions. Let me just give you a couple of examples of two collaborations that I personally had with two cultural institutions from UNESCO networks that are also among the UNESCO partners that join forces against the COVID-19. So at the Egyptian Museum in Italy and the Van Gogh Museum in Netherlands. So this is the amazing platform that UNESCO created during the lockdown to explore initiatives and stories from UNESCO network. Let me just start with a bit of storytelling. So for a model of digital transformation in cultural heritage that I did for the master in the World Heritage and Cultural Projects, I planned a visit to the Egyptian Museum. So because of the COVID, we had a virtual classroom, but of course the tour was cancelled. So since all the ladies and gentlemen in the class were very excited about the visit at the Egyptian Museum, and thanks to an ongoing collaboration that in Polytechnic we have with the museum, I called the curator, Enrico, asking for moving the physical visit into a digital one. It was possible only because the Egyptian Museum already digitized its collection and because of the great competence of the curator, Enrico, in creating the perfect storytelling around the virtual tour. So for the Egyptian Museum was the first 4 hours tour erogated in a digital way, and it was a success. So let me show a short video of this experience. Here we are at the top floor of the Egyptian Museum. As you can see, the museum is fully navigable. And let me just go to the virtual unwrap section of the exhibition. Here we have interactive touchscreen that allow users to look deep inside the Egyptian sarcophagus. So at this digital counterpart, what is called the digital twin was generated through computer tomography, a lot of technology. And my students in that case were able to see inside the coffins and retrieve information about the surface and texture of the mummies, as well as the jewelry. And in this way, Enrico's knowledge generated using technology, advanced technology for research purposes, become accessible to my students even during a pandemic lockdown. Another example comes from the Van Gogh Museum, where we studied the museum digital transformation process from 1995 to 2020. And it's a process of 25 years of organizational and strategic transformation of the museum. This is the bedroom, and this is the usual exhibits that we can find in the gallery next to the painting. So we have just a few lines of description with the core content. But if we move on the website, we have the same exhibit with more content. We have cross-content connection. We have the research in progress. And we have also the hyperlink. Hyperlink in this case to the letter that Van Gogh wrote to his brother Theo that are stored in the back end of the museum, so are not available in the gallery, are not visible by visitors because of their extreme fragility. So we have on the web the original text, we have the translation, we have the curatorial notes. This is just to say, here we have the summary of the study that we did about the coevolution between digital and organizational change at the museum in 25 years. I don't want to bother you with the challenges in reorganizing activities, just to say that it's extremely easy to adopt digital technology, but it's extremely difficult to incorporate and leverage the capabilities that digital technology can offer. So, for instance, we can use technology to increase the outreach through social media channels. Let me give a couple of examples. Here we have a post published on Facebook by the Van Gogh Museum in 2012. They discovered something about the sunflower. This is the post. And they simply said, if you want to know more about this discovery, you can find the full paper. And this is the link. So this is a knowledge pushing approach. What happened in 2019? So this is what you can see. What do you want to know about our sunflower research? And the curator will answer your question, the professor will answer your question, and the conservator will answer your question. So content are created by research department, are reinterpreted by the education department, and recombined with digital communication team. And this redesign process took 25 years. The second way of teaching and learning cultural heritage during COVID is using digital platform. So I choose to talk about the leading cultural heritage platform worldwide, that is Google Arts and Culture, that is a non-profit initiative founded by Google in 2011 that collaborates with museum, galleries, and cultural organizations around the world. So I think more or less 1,800 cultural organizations. And the mission is to bring the world's art and culture online, so it's accessible to anyone, anywhere, and for free. So here we are in the Van Gogh Museum, but on the Google Arts and Culture platform. As you can see all the collection of the museum, but you can also go inside the museum. So you can walk through the corridor of the museum, through the room. You can jump from one floor to another. And here we are in front of, again, in front of the bedroom. And by clicking on the painting, you can see the bedroom in a very different way, because Google developed a technology called the gigapixel, through which user can zoom into a brushstroke level image of details through the platform. So let's see how specifically the technology works. User can zoom into a brushstroke level of images composed of 1 billion pixels. So this is approximately 1,000 times more details than the average digital camera. So it's a new way for studying arts that is not possible in the brick and mortar gallery. Of course, the real thing is always better, but here we have new user experience and new meaning in knowledge dissemination, and thus in teaching and learning experience. You can search painting and artworks by popularity, or by historical events, or by colors. And you can also use tags using neural network that automatically applies text labels to image pixel. So it uses picture recognition to sort the artworks by keyword, so you can search for something that is within a picture in a novel way, for instance, calm, and it brings a new way to browse cultural heritage. But Google has also been injecting machine learning and artificial intelligence into some of its products, and now it's mixing with art to create a new interactive experience. So the results are a series of experimental works that introduce new ways to interact with art. For instance, here we have the oldest artwork in the world, 233,000 years before Christ. And you can do a cultural Big Bang where mathematical formulas are used to place the artworks in a 3D environment, where you can choose to visualize what a cultural Big Bang might look like, or travel through the sea of the artworks. And this allows users to interact with the artworks and identify patterns at scale. Let me give you another couple of examples. Another feature is about taking students on a time travel. So with the British Museum, with a collaboration between the British Museum and Google, students can explore the Museum of the World's timeline and choose an artifact they would like to learn more. So The one that I selected here, you can select artifact from any continent, is the atomic apocalypse from America. But of course, you can move across the timeline and you can choose several artifacts. So here it is the silver ball from the Byzantine Empire from Europe. And by clicking, you can see where the heritage came from. You have the description, the cross-related objects, and the storytelling developed directly from the curators of the British Museum. A third kind of experiment is about using technology for embracing the future to preserve the past. Here you can see how technology is used to document and preserve an ancient site devastated by earthquake. Here we are in the UNESCO heritage site of Pagan that features over 2,200 Buddhist temples and pagodas. And Pagan is an earthquake zone. And with the most recent quake in 2016, and users and students can travel through the landscape and inside the decorated temple at risk of collapse while learning the ancient story they tell. I will just give you a glimpse on how digital technologies and virtual reality can be used to bring back the life heritage, and in this specific case, an extinct reptile. Its bones are on display in the museum and are now being brought to life in virtual reality. So in partnership with Google, the Natural History Museum put flesh and skin over the ancient bone. They used the laser scanning to capture the building and the reptile itself. They virtually flooded the gallery with water so the huge reptile could swim through the gallery. And now we can see how it looked, moved, and behaved. X degrees of separation is another tool that tried to answer the question, what is the connection between any two artworks? So you just ask, what is the path between Starry Night and some 5,000-year-old sculpture? And it actually finds a connection with the usually surprising, interesting, and open up chance for discovery. Another super interesting way to exploring heritage through selfies is a feature called Portrait Matcher. And this is me the day before my PhD dissertation, as you can see from my hair. You can create user engagement by connecting people to art through selfies. So by inviting people to discover portrait art history. And the result is amazing. In a couple of days, people have taken more than 30 million selfies. And this is one of the best examples of using gamification strategy to engage people by inspiring interest. And of course, you can use your pixel, but also other ones. So what about intangible cultural heritage? All what I showed you is about tangible cultural heritage, but all of this can be applied to teaching and learning intangible cultural heritage too, or can also be applied in other totally different business contexts, so for instance, the business of fashion. But let's talk about intangible cultural heritage, where digital platform can be used for teaching and learning intangible cultural heritage, for instance, by discovering unseen craft and nearly forgotten Chinese artists and explore the art of Chinese craft. So let me just conclude with this short video about the arts of Chinese crafts. So, and the platform is plenty of this kind of exhibition. Here, for instance, we are preserving Afghan heritage, but I'm going to the conclusion. So I totally agree with what Neel, Kristal, and Nikhil showed before me in previous presentation. The point is that digital is a powerful tool, but cannot be just dumped in the cultural or educational institutions. So independently from the new ways of teaching and learning cultural heritage, digital technologies must, cultural institution and educational institution must build a digital core for the strategic rethinking and reconfiguration of activities and processes in order to develop a new paradigm for the relationship between teaching and learning, between on-site and online, and between digital experience and cultural heritage artifacts to cope and to manage the cultural health emergency. So the answer is going back to strategy and the basic understanding of how to create and capture value through the use of digital technology. Specifically, we should be able to answer these 4 questions. Who is the audience, students or visitors independently, and who is not? So what change did the audience undergo during the COVID-19 pandemic? And how did it leave the learning experience when the digital channels replaced the brick and mortar experience? Or the second point, what is the value proposition and what are you not doing? So do you have the cultural institution to collaborate with? Does the cultural institution have the collection still digitized and the skills to create different kinds of storytelling? Or using digital platform may be better? How to deliver the value in a seamless way, bridging the physical and the digital world? And what are the new indicators that university and cultural institutions should take into account? And what is the good receipt in the profit formula to capture value? So how we can respond, overcome and prevent the health emergency while balancing cultural betterment with economic sustainability. So the possible winning formula is, first of all, in light of the current health emergency and the increasing online participation, the success of cultural and education institutions can no longer be evaluated through structured quantitative approach. In this context, there is a need to take into account the microsociological aspect linked to the perception of the change in the audience in order to develop a new set of qualitative metrics and to develop a new class of on-demand educational products and services to manage the current health emergency and to prevent the effects of the new lockdown measures. And we just started to work on this new set of qualitative metrics with the Egyptian Museum with the goal to put cultural and education institutions to listen to their audience. And finally, to cope with the fact that we are losing the physical contact with our audience, is even more necessary to combine digital assets and physical assets to address new connected and dynamic user needs, both students and visitor needs. So I'm done. Sorry, I went a little bit out of time. Thank you for your time. And let's hope that we will go back to stay together soon, physically into the real world and not into the digital world. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pesce. And it was a wonderful presentations. And the get to know that technology gives tremendous, the opportunities to the ICH, the teachers and the students, and also in sharing the knowledge and intellectual challenges. So I already full, I'm very much full of digital technologies and many informations from your presentations. Okay, thank you again. But we have, I'm very sorry to tell you that we have a time constraint. So be aware that we have only 15 minutes presentation. The last speaker, actually, Professor Jiangbo is supposed to be here, but he has a very, other instance. Oh, Jiangbo is here? No. So a new presenter is a Jing Fei, a Vice Director of Digital Media Department at Shanghai Academy of Fine Arts at Shanghai University. You are the last presenter. I'm sorry, you're waiting for long, so floor is yours. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I'm not Jiangbo, Professor Jiangbo, but I'm his colleague, also from Shanghai Academy of Fine Arts. Please, I'm very honored to be here. Please let me share my screen first. Can you see that?
Yes, I can see well. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My topic is inheritance and innovation of intangible cultural heritage during the COVID-19. An unexpected coronavirus pandemic swept across China in January 2020, causing the closure of schools and factories and the lockdown of the public place, prohibiting people to gather but stayed at home to protect themselves. However, the step of intangible cultural heritage inheritance was not stopped. From the three aspects of the theoretical construction, education, popularization, and innovative practice, and through flexible and effective online organization method, a new collaboration and epidemic condition has been gradually explored over the past 6 months. The Intangible Cultural Heritage Inheritance work of Shanghai University is carried out by the Shanghai Public Art Coordinator Center, aka PACC. From February to April, Shanghai University reviewed and summarized their works of intangible cultural heritage protection and innovative design over the past 5 years, and organized a team of graduate students and teachers to write and edit the book. The book focused on the relevant works of China Intangible Cultural Heritage Barriers training program led and supported by the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security since 2015. As one of the universities participated in the training program, Shanghai University has its unique teaching concept and rich achievements in the transformation of intangible cultural heritage innovation. It adopted the method of collaboration of the barriers, the colleague teachers and students, and specially invited designers, as well as hosting international creative design work camps to support intangible cultural heritage innovations, successfully incubated more than 500 modernized works comfortable to the daily life. These new works were popular among young people. It also demonstrated the up-to-date fashion charm of the traditional craftsmanship. The epidemic forced us to slow down our life, but it gave everyone an opportunity to think. This is an unexpected but a good chance to bring our experience of intangible cultural inherited practice to the theoretical system. A lot of picture. Okay. Intangible cultural heritage protection is an overall cultural and ecological construction work. It needs admirers and enthusiasts. It needs to be recognized and loved by more people. During the 5-year works in intangible cultural heritage inherited training program, Shanghai University has motivated the teachers and students to participate in the research and practice of intangible cultural heritage and achieved good results. The number of research topics related to intangible cultural heritage among PhD students and postgraduates were increased. Several long-term cooperation projects were achieved between young teachers and barriers. Thematic teaching activities such as thematic sketch, experience course, and lectures were continuously held. Furthermore, it helped in the development of universal education and experience course to the public. During the quarantine, online aesthetic education courses were offered by PACC. It recorded the manual course of several intangible cultural heritage skills and launched the Cloud Classroom to the public with the aim of learning a skill, telling a story, designing a course, carrying out an activity, and developing a brand. Such cloud service cultivated a good atmosphere of innovation which helped in collaborating with more public members and institutions to participate in intangible cultural heritage. In addition, the practice of intangible cultural heritage inheritance has been incorporated into undergraduate courses. It was Spring Festival when the epidemic reached its peak, while in the traditional, it was the time to post the New Year pictures to wish for auspicious, safe, and health. Under this circumstance, students from SAFA created a new image of anti-epidemic threshold guardian, Menshen, and cooperated with the inheritors to produce the traditional woodblock printing in the new fashion. More courses like this are under development to constantly integrating intangible cultural heritage into disciplines such as art design in colleges and universities. The epidemic has broke the movement of people between province and cities, but the work of intangible cultural heritage poverty alleviation, the cross-border cooperation between intangible cultural heritage and time-honored brands are still under progress. Shanghai University owns 2 national-level traditional handicraft workstations established by the Department of Intangible Cultural Heritage of Culture and Tourism. One is the Shanghai University Qinghai Guoluo workstation in Guoluo, Qinghai province. It is the 4th traditional handicraft workstation of eco-cultural protection in China and plays an important role in the coordinated development of East and West. The other is the Shanghai University Traditional Handicraft Workstation, established in Shanghai University, which is the sole and only traditional handicraft workstation built in colleges and universities in China. In recent years, its major work focused on research and development of Chishui bamboo weaving project in Zunyi, Guangzhou province. At present, the key strategy of Shanghai University is to cooperate with Shanghai's well-known and time-honored enterprise and brands to carry out innovative research and development for traditional craft projects in the pair-up assisted regions. Planned by PSCC, the launch of Bamboo for Safety Bamboo Dim Sum gift box in April has gained social attention and won prizes from the public with the effect of the teachers and students of SAFA. Shanghai Harbin Food Factory, the well-known Shanghai food brand, as well as the inheritance enterprise of Hai Pai, aka Shanghai Style, making skills use the bamboo basket made with Chishui bamboo weaving skills as its dim sum package box. We know that during the epidemic, public gathering are prohibited. People may only go to the park for picnic occasionally. This gift box is also a picnic basket, and carrying some Shanghai dim sum to picnic in the park is a new fashion in Shanghai. This cooperation has not only provided incomes to the poor in Chishui, but also opened a chance to bring the art of the bamboo weaving into the life of the Shanghai public. Our projects under development include the limited edition of Shanghai watch employing Tangka from Qingdao Guoluo, from Qinghai Guoluo, and the hero's pants with Chishui bamboo weaving skills. The Tibet platters owns 90% of the world's yak resources. At present, the workstation is advanced in deep development and utilization of local yakulu fabric resources with traditional textile and production techniques to incubate new kuru clothing products. It is expected to be launched in the second half of this year. Finally, it is worth mentioning that the ICH Products Live Sales campaign launched during the China Culture and National Heritage Day in June has spread an extensive participation from the whole society and provide a broad and vivid stage for intangible cultural heritage products to enter the public daily life. The benefits to the bearers are enormous as well. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Jiangfei. Okay, thank you for sharing your experience at Shanghai University, the very useful programs. So we are really, I'm very much thankful to all the presenters, 5 presenters, and actually we run out of time right now, so the Q&A session should be very quick. So I organized the questions like this. Actually, we have a series of questions on the instructional methods and technologies and other strategies and policies and everything. But I'm going to give you like a summary style, the 3 main questions. So one is that the many participants asked us what is the a model case of instruction in ICH. So I think many of you already give through the presentation show the model cases and good practices in your own communities and regions. But the audiences also want to know the specific model case or good practices in the education programs. And the second one is that about technology, using technology in ICH education and instructions. And we have a very specific questions to the Professor Neel. Some audiences ask us that how ready is your country or institution in taking this measure, technology, the computers and other digital methods during and after the pandemic is one of the very specific questions to going to the Professor Neel. And another one is about the technology. What is the role of the technology in the heritage ICH instruction during this pandemic time? So yeah, okay. We just get short. The long questions be very 1 or 2 or 3 questions I have summarized. So anyone answer to these questions, including Dr. Neel? Yeah. How about Dr. Neel, the first answer to the question, how readiness in your country or institution, your university, in taking this measure, like a digital technology in the instruction, education during and after the pandemic?
Sure, Professor Ram. I will be very brief. On the first question, at Ahmedabad University, so basically I will represent two countries. I will represent India, where my university is located. I'll also reflect on Nepal, where I'm located right now, where I'm from. Both of these countries, I would say, had the technological background. They could have already used it, but many universities actually were not using the online tools and a lot of technological tools in their teaching. In our program, however, most of our courses had already integrated the online teaching. For example, some kind of learning management systems were already in use. And because of that, I think switching to the online teaching was not that difficult. However, I have observed many other universities struggling with that for a few weeks. And then since there was no choice, I think everybody caught up with that. But I must say that online teaching is not just about using the online tools. It's also about making sure your pedagogy, your curriculum, your syllabus, course outline is fitting into that. So there is a lot of homework that many of the universities have to do in both in India and in Nepal that I can see. Regarding what was the other question? Yeah, how do you learn? I think, to be brief, I would like to refer to what you also reminded of the audience of my last year's presentation, where I talked about contextual learning. Now, the idea of contextual learning allows us to think about a learning agenda, the content, and connect to a context. So even if I cannot go to a particular site, if I can somehow connect that through my own experience, my own context, then I think as a learner, I can somehow connect. So maybe I think that's one aspect we can integrate while we are into this sort of hybrid mode that some part of the semester is online, and maybe there will be an opportunity to go for a brief kind of face-to-face interaction and all that. So we have to be creative, and I'm thinking maybe it would be more of a hybrid mode rather than fully online mode. However, in certain situations, we might have to go to fully online mode, and this is where kind of connecting to the individual student's context would be very important. I would put it that way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And relation to, thank you very much for the Professor Neel. And I would like to ask the other cases in like Australia. The technology, the effectiveness or in the educational area, I would say what is the role of technology in education? So any more, can you give us Professor Buckley in your Deakin University case?
Oh, it's a huge question, and we have very small time, so I'll be very brief. I think that just following on the previous comments, I think we have so much technology, and there are already so many digital resources that are available to us. I think the challenge is to find the best way to use them, to bring them into our pedagogy and our teaching outcomes in ways that are actually helpful to students. They can't. It's not just a matter of throwing technology at students and hoping they'll learn something from it, if you know what I mean. So I think certainly in our case, the technology is there, in fact, more than I can ever learn or become familiar with. So it's not a shortage issue, but thinking about how to use it well is the real challenge. And as I said in my presentation, I think there are some ethical issues in the way in which we use technology, especially when we are using it in our teaching about intangible cultural heritage and working with communities that really need very careful thought. So that's not different. Technology didn't create those problems. We were already needing to work through those things. So I think technology just gives us more avenues and more tools and the ability to see people who aren't close by, like tonight. So thank you very much for the question.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Buckley. And right now it's 7 o'clock already, so I have to wrap up this webinar. And we learned a lot from 5 presenters, and also even under this very serious pandemic, but still we need the social collaboration and institutional, like knowledge sharing, and the sharing is very important, keyword in our webinar. So thank you very much for inviting me as a moderator, and also my thanks to EHCAP and the Bangkok office and every audiences, and also the presenters. Great presenting, the activity, great presentations. I really appreciate it. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Han, for moderating this session successfully. And thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you being here. EHCAP and UNESCO Bangkok office are going to organize 2 more sessions under this webinar series. So please check EHCAP's website for further information. And thank you again for joining us today. And I hope to see you all next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.